Great. So I see people are adding in here. We are recording this, and so we'll have it available for people as if you want to circulate it, because this is a very important issue that we have in Louisiana, where there is a very serious threat for a ban. The committee chairman of Senate Judiciary Sub C, Senator Morris, is driving this train hard in order to ban kratom. This, of course, is not the first time we've seen this kind of attempt. There has not been a state ban on kratom since 2017, when the Department of Health in Rhode Island yielded to the request of the FDA to ban kratom and schedule it as a Schedule One substance, and they were the last of 6 states that did so when the FDA started its crusade in order to ban kratom. There hasn't been a single state since then that has done that, and there's a reason why, which we're going to get into in just a moment. There have been attempts. The most recent one we saw in Mississippi and in Texas, where there were bans recommended. And even in Texas, where you had a very adamant position by Senator Perry, even he yielded to the science and said that he would retreat to a regulatory position, although that regulatory position is one that is extremely problematic. And we are going to have to mount a very significant effort in Texas as it goes through the House of Representatives. But we'll have a separate webinar on that issue when it's timely, in order to rally people to attend the hearing in Texas to resist the obviously deliberate attempt to constructively ban kratom in the state of Texas. But here in Louisiana, this is serious because of the legislative power that is held by this particular chairman of the Judiciary Subcommittee, and he's driving this train hard. And when you look at the basis for it, I think that he is the only ground he has is to attempt this very emotional plea that kratom is somehow injuring people or killing people. And in fact, the senator encouraged members of the Kratom Danger Awareness Group to rally as many people who could to attend the hearing on Tuesday. This is a serious threat to what's happening in the state of Louisiana, and we have got to make sure that we rally as many people who can be in attendance on Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m. in the Judiciary Sub C committee, chaired by Senator Morris, who is the sponsor of the ban bill. It is critical that the other committee members hear loud and clear that there are people that are safely consuming kratom products, that this attempt to ban it is not grounded in any science, and in fact, it has significant threats to the safety of Louisiana kratom consumers if it were to be enacted. To the first point, we know that kratom is not an appropriate candidate for scheduling because both mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine do not meet the 8-factor criteria for scheduling under the Louisiana Controlled Substances Act. I can say that because the Louisiana Controlled Substances Act matches word for word what the federal standard is under the Controlled Substances Act. And we know that the FDA has been unsuccessful in convincing the arbiters, both in terms of the Assistant Secretary for Health at HHS and the Drug Enforcement Administration, who evaluate the recommendation made by the Food and Drug Administration. On 2 occasions, the FDA's recommendation has been withdrawn, the most recent of which was Dr. Brett Giroir, the Assistant Secretary for Health during the Trump first administration, who withdrew it with a scathing rebuttal letter on the FDA, calling it embarrassingly poor evidence and data. That is critically important because if the legislature wants to override the Controlled Substances Act criteria for scheduling, which Senator Morris is attempting to do, they have no scientific basis for doing so. They will try to draw upon these claims of serious adverse events or fatalities. But today, and this is an important second argument, the FDA, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, NIDA, all agree that kratom should be regulated, and they've included in that recommendation assessments for adulterated products and polydrug use that are attributable to the serious adverse events and deaths. They specifically say that kratom deaths are rare, and when they do occur, it's attributable to these underlying health conditions, polydrug use, and adulterated products. We know that the emerging threat to the consumers is from these synthetically derived kratom products called 7-hydroxymetrogenine or 7, and there are some other weird chemical combinations of other alkaloids that have been introduced into the marketplace, all of which are designed to increase the potency, strength, and the effect that these synthetic products have, deceiving consumers into thinking that they're actually consuming a kratom product. It's important that these legislators, when they hear testimonies of families who claim that their loved ones have died of kratom, that there is no basis for that to be a conclusion that they can support other than medical examiners and coroners take the bait from the FDA and say, oh, it's a metrogenine death because metrogenine is present in the tox screen. It does not mean that, in fact, it was kratom that caused the death. And importantly, within the case of these synthetically derived kratom compounds, those compounds do not last in the bloodstream long enough for a coroner or a medical examiner to actually identify them. And so you may have metrogenine that has a longer testing ability that's picked up, but the actual cause of the death would have been one of these synthetic kratom products that are being marketed on the in the marketplace. We will have two scientists who will represent us at the hearing, Dr. Kirsten Smith from Johns Hopkins University and Dr. Jack Henningfield from Pinney Associates and Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Chris McCurdy has already testified in the first hearing, and so his testimony, of course, is consistent with what I have just told you with respect to the weaknesses of the case that's being made by Senator Morris and his colleagues that are supporting a ban on kratom. And finally, an important argument is that by banning kratom, they will unfairly criminalize more than 325,000 kratom consumers in Louisiana, and it is clear that they will force those consumers to far more dangerous substances and actually create a black market of dangerously adulterated and synthesized kratom products. That is not my conclusion. That's the conclusion made by Dr. Joie and by Chris McCurdy and by Dr. Jack Henningfield, all of whom know that the behaviors in the marketplace, as they have observed in similar kinds of substances, that's exactly what happens. And so, to the extent that these legislators, however well-intentioned they may be, and assuming that they are, they're not going to accomplish the objective that they're seeking because the evidence is absolutely clear that the science doesn't support it. And in fact, by enacting a ban, they will create a worse situation than they think currently exists along the way. I can tell you one experience that we had there in Louisiana in the last session where the local sheriffs or the Sheriff's Association was actually testifying in support of a ban. And some of the evidence that was supported by the sheriffs was the testimony of a mother who claimed that her son had died from kratom, and it was kratom only. She would not produce the autopsy when we had requested it. The sheriff's deputy in the parish in which she resided told me that he had seen the autopsy and what she was saying was not accurate. Now, it is obvious that there is a movement in the community where trial attorneys are trying to exploit the fact that there are kratom-related deaths as reported by medical examiners and coroners, and that, of course, gives them the ticket to file lawsuits. Those lawsuits should be grounded in facts, not on supposition, and not on guesses, and not on the fact that the medical examiners and coroners may have gotten it wrong. We have ample data in evaluations of autopsies that have been reported by medical examiners and coroners to be kratom only, and yet when they have been examined carefully, including all 46 of the deaths that were reported by the Tampa Bay Times in their hit piece called Deadly Dose, we replicated the methodology that they claim to have used, And we obtained all of the autopsy reports, and we found that but for a couple where it is undetermined what the cause of death is, largely we suspect because of the synthetic kratom products that are now flooding the marketplace, all of them had other causes unrelated to kratom, and they certainly could not have drawn the conclusion, as the Tampa Bay Times tried to assert, that these were kratom associated deaths. Despite the fact that the medical examiner checked the box, doesn't mean that when you look at the tox screen, you look at the conditions of the death, that in fact that's true. And so I think that that's an important point that we're going to want to make. But there's a sense here in the kratom community that I have observed over the past couple of years that when these bans come up, somebody says, "Hey, somebody else is going to be down there testifying; they can handle it." We've had success. We know that the bans don't get enacted, but they will if we don't stand up and have our voices heard. And I assure you that the anti-kratom forces have been rallied by Senator Morris. He's going to give them their vocal voice, and he's going to try to ride on the backs of those claims the kind of evidence that will support a ban, despite the fact it's not scientifically grounded, and despite the fact that they cannot justify the assertions that are being made by these individuals. That will not matter, but there has to be a large contingent of kratom consumers who are at that hearing in order to testify about the experiences that you have had with kratom, how you safely consume it along the way. And I'll make one other point, and then I'm going to turn it over to my friend Bobby LeBlanc, who is a retail store owner in Louisiana and has some tremendous experience here as we have continued this now 5-year fight to make sure that Louisiana does not ban kratom. That point is that there's a division within the community that has developed over the past several years where you say, well, pure leaf kratom is fine, but I have questions about the extract products. And that division has allowed for our critics to come in and say, oh, well, it's the extract products are the problem. We should only protect raw leaf kratom. The truth is that all of the science that has been concluded supports the safety profile of both formulations, as long as the kratom extract products are formulated using FDA-approved food-grade solvents in order to extract the metrogenine, and it virtually eliminates 7-hydroxymetrogenine, by the way, and all other microbial contaminants. It gives you a standardized dose. The fact that there are consumers who prefer to use an extract product should not be the basis for people in the pure leaf kratom supporting group to demonize them, because that opens the door for our critics to come in and say that these are dangerous products. We at the American Kratom Association believe, and it's based on good research, that these highly concentrated products are dangerous, that these synthesized and semi-synthesized products are dangerous. And to just give you an illustration, I mentioned it on our last webinar. I sat in the audience in Rhode Island and listened to Vince Sanders, who is the leader of the Heart Group, and he testified that not only these semi-synthesized, oxidation-derived, highly potent 7-hydroxymetrogenine products were safe, he said that the recommended serving size for 7-hydroxymetrogenine products was 28 milligrams per serving. Now think about the context of that. We say that that naturally occurring 7-hydroxymetrogenine, which is a metabolite that occurs in the drying process of the plant, never should exceed 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the overall product. We also say that in our newest KCPA that the conversion of that presence of not greater than 2% should never exceed 1 milligram serving of 7-OH in a particular serving size. Anything above that is synthesized, it is potentially dangerous, and the concept that you would take a 28 milligram product as a recommended serving size is mind-boggling. Now, the important point to make here is that there is no safety data that supports the safety of any 7-hydroxymetrogenine product. None. We invited the lead scientist from the Heart Group to make a presentation in January, at a meeting that we convened with our AK leadership summit meetings. And that particular scientist acknowledged on the record that they had not completed any scientific research, which, by the way, is a requirement under federal law prior to market entry to have a reasonable basis for safety under the conditions of use. He admitted they had none. They were working on it. They looked and were optimistic that they could create that safety database based on the conditions of use, which is currently unknown, by 2026. That is not the prescription for being on the market with a safe product. And they admitted it. Now they're retreating and they're trying to say, oh, we're relying upon the 2021 eight-factor analysis that was conducted by Dr. Jack Henningfield, where he said that metrogeny and 7-hydroxymetrogeny were safe. Well, the first 7-OH product entered the marketplace in 2023. The synthesized, oxidized, semi-synthesized 7-OH products. They weren't even on the market when Dr. Henningfield did his eight-factor analysis reevaluation from the 2016 original one that was done, where he concluded that in its natural form and naturally occurring 7-hydroxymetrogeny were not a safety concern. So you can see how our opponents are manipulating the data and how important it is that we are there on Tuesday morning, 10:30, in order to actually go through and defend Kratom at that hearing. So I'm going to now turn it over to Bobby LeBlanc, who can give you his perspective and describe how important he thinks it is that we have a large presence there at the hearing on Tuesday morning. Bobby.
All right, Mac. I'm assuming you can see me now, huh? We got the video.
Yes, we
okay.
Can. It's fine.
Yeah, so look, I want to first tell everybody out there, listen, I've been in this business a very long time, 15 years plus. I was part of the Kratom community before even anybody knew what Kratom was. It was amazing because a lot of the Kratom was coming from certain people that were doing the synthetic game back in the day. And it was kind of interesting because Kratom kind of got put in the mix. And for a while there, Kratom came out and everybody kind of laughed about it, joked about it. It wasn't no big thing. And Mac had mentioned, we 5 years into Louisiana fighting this Kratom, but actually it's a little longer than that because Mac would tell you, when We the People came out and 143,000 people came out and had an outcry, that was almost 7 years ago? And it was amazing to see the voice and the outcry and where we were at. And back in the day when, like he said, I have a retail store, I have a tobacco store, a smoke shop. People may call a head shop. I had to argue with narcotics about opening this store. And it was about the transparency is what it all brought about. And I think, as retail store owners, we got to understand what we up against. And 15 years ago, to even 5 years ago, the whole industry has developed, evolved, and like anything, you're always going to find different things, different approaches and all. But I can tell y'all this, from a consumer standpoint, and I'm going to take the retail aspect out of the aspect of this. I'm going to take me as a consumer. I've been selling Kratom for 15 years. I've been a consumer for 12. I suffer from a severe stenosis of the spine issue. I have the hardest time getting up in the morning. I have so much back pressure. I cannot drink coffee in the morning because it gives me a bad caffeine, just not good feel, nauseated, the whole 9 yards. Yet I run a ton of companies. I'm steadily dealing with litigation like this. I'm pretty interconnected. I have a lot of people on the other side, and it's hard. It's hard to be that one person as a business owner, as an accountant, everything else in a nutshell, and to fight. And I can't say this enough with consumers. You got to put a fight out there. And going through this whole 15-year process, that's one thing I recognize and so passionate about, and why I love Kratom so much, and why as a consumer it has helped my life tremendous. Look, the medical system in my own personal life has failed my wife, us tremendous. I actually let my health insurance just drop recently because of the discussion and the conversations through our medical system that allowed my wife to go on a different approach that I just don't agree with. But I can tell you this much: when I take my Kratom every day in a low dose, it's nothing. I can't even take an extract because it makes me sick. The point is, you have hardworking Americans out there who believe in this product. You have people out there who know that I like that argument of, hey, I drink a cup of coffee in the morning because it takes that mood swing and puts it on a different level. That's what we got to look at as Kratom. Kratom is that consumable wellness product that we brought into our lives to allow us to be that person that can function and just do the right thing. Listen, I'm the one person that anybody will tell you out there. I don't do drugs. I very occasionally do a Tylenol. I can't stand cannabis, and people kind of laugh about that because I own a smoke shop. I just got awarded one of our hemp license, which I think is amazing. But to see where Session's heading with the hemp program and to see where we're going with what happened with the vaping stuff and all, it's a very big disconnect. And one thing I've learned in retail is you have to put people behind you. And I can tell y'all this right now as a consumer, whether if you believe in the AKA, we got the GKC, the Global Kratom Coalition Group that's coming into the mix, all of this stuff. The point is listen, these guys bring in the facts and the science, and these webinars are there for a valuable tool. I'm not going to get in here and get into the science of it. I'm not going to get in here and to get all of that other stuff going. What I'm going to tell y'all on the consumer side, it's a product that has become a lifesaver to many of people, and including myself. And God bid, if they want to go over here and schedule 14 grams of Kratom in your possession and hit me with a $500 fine or over 14 grams and a $2,000 fine with some imprisonment, well, hey, I'm close to a lot of people. Here I am. Come get me. Because the point is, as a consumer, I should have the right to choose to wellness. And that's what I'm going to advocate for everybody in Louisiana. Step up for your rights, your rights to wellness, your rights to what's going on. We've become a society of these people who are very uneducated in our political arena that don't understand where we're at. We're going to ban. And what's going to happen? Like Max said, it's going to the drug dealer. Going to the black market. We're entertaining the drug dealers out there, the border states, and the internet all too well. When look, everybody has their own ordeal. Everybody has what they feel they need to do. But what I will tell you, the AKA has done a powerhouse in the last 5 years. Hell, 2 years ago, we would have had Kratom banned. And Matt can tell you, we set up some good parameters. We had 2 scheduled bills that was going to put it in a very serious situation. And we tried to bring in protection. And what happened? It fell through. But the voice of the people means a difference. Just like I'm telling my vets right now, my vets don't realize how much important it is right now to share your testimonial, not just for Kratom, for everything. What's killing us in Louisiana right now, and consumers will see that, we're getting smoked with this insurance mess. We're getting smoked with sales taxes. We 10.5% here in sales taxes. It's amazing to see what we're doing on a political landscape. Yet we got 17 bills from what I can see on the House floor, from vapor bills to hemp bills to to Kratom bills to the psychedelic bills. All of this is going to affect the consumers at the end of the day. But we all would agree as a consumer, we should have the right to choose. And that's what I'm going to advocate all of my consumers here is, listen, step up. A simple voice goes a long way. Whether if you're good, whether you for it or not, the bottom line is your voice can make a difference. What's going on in Texas? What's going on here in Louisiana? A lot of that's to do with uneducation of our political landscape. I have a senator who I have had a lot of good conversations with, and he told me, Bobby, it's hard to vote on something or look at something when we're not educated on it. Well, that's why I welcome my senators, our representatives, and all to come here. And that's what I'm going to say on a retail standpoint. 15 years I've been dealing with this. And throughout this 15 years, I never thought I'd be on a computer right now having to argue over a product that is a right to wellness to consumers. And it breaks my heart to know that we have people out there. Look, I get it. Senator Morris has a certain understanding he feels of why this needs to be banned. But we need to talk about the facts, like Max said, and we need to listen to people like myself who's been in here for a long time that listens to the outcry. I was in one of my stores yesterday and I had somebody tell me, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is going to devastate my life. All I want to do is be able to function and go to work and just be happy with life. And this has changed. Look, we get it. They have people out there who are addicts that's having a hard time. And I pray for them. I feel for them. And I honestly want to be there for them in every which way to help them. But I can tell you right now, Kratom in an unadulterated format, in the format that we're looking to keep it, like Max said, within a 2% of 7-hydroxy. We don't want 7-OH going because it's going to ban it all. But we have what's called alkaloids in Kratom, and we have what's called cannabinoids in hemp products or cannabis. The bottom line is we have to advocate on the consumer side. I talked about my wife's medical journey. I talked about our medical journey. Listen, every doctor that we have seen, have talked to, have been told they need to be more open-minded. And I think that's where we at, especially in the state of Louisiana. We announced a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of millions of dollars shortfall, but yet all we just done, or all we trying to do is entertain people to go across state line, including my own self. It's sad when I have to sit here and say, I'm gonna have to go to Mississippi. I was with a very key person. I'm not going to mention who this person is. A week before we got hit by that massive snowstorm, I walked in his office and I told him straight up, I guess y'all going to have to take me to jail because it feels like this is the direction we're heading. I can tell y'all right now, and I promise you, if Kratom gets banned, I will have a lot of people behind me. Because we all going to go down, and we're going to go down with a voice and a fight because Kratom is saving lives, and that's the facts. And Mac can go back and tell you this over and over again through all the facts and everything out there. These deaths, we feel for these families, we feel for the people, but there's a lot more to that story that's not being unfolded. And for people to come out and claim Kratom is gas station heroin, I have an issue with that. Very big issue. I've never done heroin in my life. I've never seen it other than in a movie or on a pamphlet or something else. But I can tell you one thing, I'm not a heroin addict. I'm a consumer that believes in Kratom. So with that said, I'm gonna finish up with this on the side of the consumers. Let's not make this what's called the death to Louisiana. Let's make this a voice to be heard. Let's make this something that's special, because I can tell y'all right now, if we lose Kratom, we better get ready for everything that's coming, because we got what's called proprietary blends. We have these hemp products. Look what we're doing with our hemp products at 20% excise. Look what we're doing with our vapor products, 33% excise. All of that does is push people to go to the internet, push people to go across state lines. People want easy access, especially our vets. And we need to step up and realize what our vets have done and how much our vets are relying on Kratom. And that's our voice. And every legislator out there needs to listen to our vets, because that's our people that we need to be listening to. So I'm going to turn it over to this about our politics real quick. And I'm going to say like this. Look, Senator Morris, if you're listening, and I hope you are, I get it. I understand, but this is wrong to the people of Louisiana. I think you need to, be open-minded and listen to Representative Boyer's bill, the House bill that we're trying to push through to help protect Kratom. Look, we understand that it doesn't need to go around this whole entire crazy, let's regulate, let's do that. We think we need to listen to MAC and the AK and these other entities and allow them to help bring in the right, approach to this. I go back to the supplement market. One thing that I've learned with MAC is about how the supplement market became the self-regulating market. And I think we need to go that route. Do I believe strongly that they have stores out there, that they have people out there that will solicit to a minor, or people out there that will do the wrong thing? But it's amazing how this last hearing that got put down was talking about pregnant women. The point is, our narrative needs to be better understood than let's just go attack something. So look, this is a punch in the face to the people of Louisiana. And I think that punch in the face needs to be real. It can't be real with the ban on Kratom. So I'm going to strongly advise our politics to not show weakness like we have been doing in the state. We've seen the failness that's gone down with vapor. We've seen the failing approach that is becoming with hemp. Now we're going to cause Kratom to cause an issue that's going to cause furthermore. And then we got all these other products across the board. Again, listen to experts like me. And I will say I'm an expert in the retail/wholesale side of it. The science side, I leave that to people like Mac. The other side, I leave that to people like Mac. But the point is, the synthetic days are back in full swing. We need to understand them, because the war on drugs has become a lot worse. And we need to get a bad handle on this, because this is just scratching the surface on what's to come. So again, people of Louisiana, politics, consumers, advocates, look, whether if you in this for the good or bad, what I'm going to tell you is follow the facts, follow what's going on, and listen to the people. I will challenge our own president of this country to come sit in my smoke shop and work a day with me and understand how Kratom should be sold, number one, and understand how people rely on this to get through their everyday life. I'm passionate about this, as you can see in this video. And look, think smart, not dumb, because I'm telling y'all right now, in this political arena, we opening up a Pandora's box we do not want to open up. So I'm going to leave it like this with our politics. Our state is dying. We're entertaining other states all too well. We're entertaining the internet more than so. We're talking about access to our kids. Our kids are getting so smart. Our kids get our hands on anything they want. Let's let responsible people help bring this to a new level. People like Mac, people like Dr. McCurdy, people that understand where all this stuff is heading. So I'm going to beg our politics to listen before you act. So I'm going to go over to one last thing I want to cover, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mac, is our store owners. Listen, guys, y'all want to be in this business, it's time to step up. Step up and fight for something that's right. Quit thinking about the profits. Think about the passion behind this. Think about the lives this is saving. Yes, you might have a death or two here and there, but hey, let's talk about alcohol. Let's talk about tobacco. Let's talk about all this other stuff. We talk about Big Pharma and how we scared that Big Pharma is going to come in and mess with this. The bottom line is we need to step up. We're all going to lose our business just like we're losing our country if we don't step up. They have bad actors out there, and they need to be put in their place. The point is nobody is sitting here demonizing a certain market saying we can't have this or do this. We all just asking for a standardized, and let's be more transparent. We don't need this to go in the hands of LDH and have it 10 different ways like what's going on with the hemp program without getting the leadership and the advice and understanding. It's amazing how I can buy a 100 milligram seltzer out of California for $7.99 pre-price, and I got to sell a 5 milligram for $5.99 or $6.99. That forces people to go across state lines. But step up and fight. Share these videos. Share people. I'm only one person. There's only people out there that can do it. Try to be a part of all of this. Really step up, but get ready. Because if we lose Kratom, I promise y'all will be dialing my phone asking what we going to do next. I've been in this business for 40 years, ever since I was a child. I've been in the C-store business all my life. Been in the smoke shop business for 15 years. It's amazing how much Kratom has came or where it came today. And I go back to that outcry and we the people, and it's so sad how the government has shut that down. But Matt can tell you, if we had an outcry like we got now, and we had every industry following the footsteps that the AKA has brought to the table, Mac Haddo needs to run for president. But with that said, I'm going to say this. Mac brings a lot of stuff to the table. And Mac is one of the first guys with his background that will question the FDA and everybody out there. And these people that he put in this place, I ask myself all the time, how is this possible? This man is a genius. But it's all about what the consumers are doing. Yes, they have a lot of people out there that are in it for the money. And I get it. It's part of.
I don't know how we lost him. And I promise I didn't pay for that endorsement. Thank you, Bobby, and hopefully we can get him back here in a minute. A couple of things I want to emphasize. One is Senator Morris is not our enemy. Disinformation is our enemy. He's acting on bad information provided to him by people, constituents perhaps, some of the anti-Kratom people, and we need to bring to the table the facts and the truth, and that will prevail. It has done it in multiple states where similar kinds of bans were recommended. And I think we're going to be able to do that. Let me also say something about the Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanicals for Better Health and Wellness. We have been working hard to find common ground with one another, and I think we're making substantial progress. But I can tell you that when it comes to the ban in Texas and the ban in Louisiana, we are unified on that position that Kratom should not be banned, and you will hear that resonate at the hearing from all of those groups on Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m. And by the way, it is going to be at the Louisiana Capitol in Baton Rouge, and you go to room F at 10:30. It's the Senate Judiciary Sub-C Committee. That C is in caffeine, C is in citrus. So we look forward to seeing everyone there. Critically important that you rally everyone to either attend or you rally people to send their emails, to flood the email addresses of these senators on that committee to let them know that there is a voice out there, as Bobby said, of Kratom consumers in the state of Louisiana who would be disadvantaged, and a ban would force them into being criminalized and force them into the black market. And perhaps even more conveniently, to go on the internet. And it deprives the state of Louisiana of the ability to control the quality of the products and to get the revenue that comes from sales taxes. And we, of course, now are pushing hard in order to facilitate the enforcement for a reasonable excise tax on Kratom products. So we're going to continue to work on these. Please rally everyone in your network to participate either in person on Tuesday morning, and I look forward to seeing you there in person, that we can talk about these things, and you'll have the chance to meet Dr. Henningfield and Dr. Smith. It is an incredible opportunity for you to be there to speak up, tell your story, and to inform these legislators about how they are acting on outdated, inaccurate, and disinformation with respect to Kratom. I'll leave it there for the second. I'm going to answer a couple of the one question that we have, and that's about California. California Assembly Bill 1088. This has been a struggle to get to a reasonable accommodation for the appropriate regulation of Kratom products in California. Today, as we speak, the Department of Health is going into vendors and they are shutting them down and seizing their Kratom products. And as a justification, they hand them a copy, a printout of the FDA and Kratom website. It is the most absurd basis for a regulatory action that one could imagine, and yet that's what they're doing. So Assembly Bill 1088 will correct that problem. It needs work. The current sponsor is a medical doctor. She's not happy with some of the conditions in the marketplace, but she's coming along, and we will amend this bill to accommodate some of the issues that you have raised, Stephen. So have a little patience with us. It's a long haul there in the California legislature to get to a final passage, but we're doing well, and we're going to strengthen some of these particular the provisions that you've identified here, because we want clarity around what the levels of 7OH are. We want to make sure that the 7H, the age verification process is reasonably done, and we also want to make sure that there are the kinds of constraints around the supply chain that will appropriately protect the Kratom marketplace. So we're looking at a lot of those provisions and working with the sponsor. Great news is that the Association of Narcotic Control Officers endorsed the bill. And so we're very close to getting into a consensus position there in California that will help us to protect and preserve the Kratom marketplace there. So I don't see any other questions here.
Mac,
Oh, I'm sorry. They're actually.
no, I'm sorry about the disconnect, but I'd like to close out on something I was finishing up.
Fire away.
Yeah. So no, what I wanted to finish up with it's just simply just, going back to the store and listen, y'all, nobody's trying to label you as something that they think you need to be. The bottom line is we have a product here that has saved people's lives. And listen, I'm very close to some of the narcotics agents, very close to a lot of politics and representatives and sheriffs and all. And they all would agree. They know if Bobby goes to them, it's real. And that's what I'm going to tell y'all. Listen, I know there's a lot of backlash out there of people who think this is something that it could be different, but it's not that. It's genuine. And I go back to Mac and what they have done over all these years. I wish every product from a bottle of Coca-Cola had the backbone like we had with Kratom. But the people want this because they know it saves their life. So all I'm going to ask everybody in the state of Louisiana is please, 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 I'm here. I love to answer any questions or do anything I can to help legislators, consumers. I'm here. But it just breaks my heart to know that we in a position that's being dictated by too much uneducation. So I don't know how more to say this other than step up, fight for your rights. And like I said, please stay into these webinars because they're very helpful tools, even if you're not a Kratom consumer, because you'll imaginally really kind of get a grasp on what goes on around. Like Max said with California, it's crazy how these agencies can just walk in and do whatever they want to do. But let's fight. And thank you again, Mac. Thank you for your team. Y'all been amazing, great. And I look forward to Tuesday of putting up a fight.
There you go. Thank you, Bobby. So the question about how you get the phone numbers and the emails for the committee, They should have been in the link that was sent along with this webinar invitation. Mark, do you want to tell us where people can go to order to sign into the system to allow them to send the emails? Mark's part of our support team here that runs the advocacy network. You're on mute, Mark. Okay, he might have stepped away. So what I'll do is make sure that this information is resent to you in the morning, and we will have it up on the protectkratom.org website, so you can go there and you can click on the link that will give you the access to the committee members with their phone numbers and their email addresses. Um, so we'll provide that support and information for you. Misty asked, what about the state of Colorado? The state of Colorado has about a week left in their legislative session. The AKA has vigorously opposed the current version of the KCPA, which it shouldn't be called that in our opinion. But we have been working diligently with the Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanicals for Better Health and Wellness, and we have found an agreement on language that, if it can be properly amended, that we would support. So you can look for some information over the next 2 days that will determine whether or not the sponsors of the bill are willing to accept the agreed upon language that the GKC and the Botanicals Better Health and Wellness and the AKA have agreed on, which we think is a good framework for regulation to supplement the existing KCPA. We'll see how that plays out, and just watch your emails, Misty, for that information. And I've got to tell you, I'm more optimistic than I have ever been about being able to come to a resolution with some of the conflicts with the Global Kratom Coalition on the regulatory framework that that we have had conflicts on. The AKA recently completed a model Kratom Consumer Protection Act evaluation for 2026, and we are now seeking the endorsements not only of the leading kratom manufacturers in the United States who are willing to accept this reasonable kratom framework for regulations, but also working with these other advocacy groups. And I think we're very close to agreeing upon the same regulatory framework, which will be a magnificent step forward and reduce the confusion in state legislatures between competing groups fighting with one another, which I think has caused some real problems in the last year. We now have 15 states that have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. I believe that we'll get at least 3 more, maybe 4, before the end of the legislative sessions. I'm hoping Louisiana will be one that will flip from the ban into acceptance of the regulatory framework in the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which we're working on now. So let's hope that that works out. I have always said, and this is something that I learned from the first day on August the 30th, when I was called by the American Kratom Association and asked to come on as a lobbyist to help them to fight the proposed ban by the FDA. And I told the AK, as I've told many of you many times, that I told them it was a fool's errand. There was no way you could not, after a Federal Register notice had been published, ever get the DEA to rescind that recommendation. But it was because of the outcry, and Bobby referenced it early, 146,000 people signed the We the People White House petition website saying not to ban kratom. You had 51 members of Congress, 26 Republicans and 25 Democrats. You had 13 members of the United States Senate, all in a 3-week time frame, by the way, because that scheduling recommendation was under the emergency power section. No comment period. 30 days later, it was the law. And for 2 years, kratom would have been provisionally banned, and then they would go for the full 8-factor evaluation and permanent ban 2 years later. The DEA, in an unprecedented action, because they heard the message from kratom consumers. None of those members of Congress would have signed that letter. Senator Sanders and Senator Hatch wouldn't have advocated with their fellow colleagues in a nonpartisan way to say don't ban kratom, but for the voices of people that stood up and fought. And we need that in Louisiana today. We need the same passion, the same fervor, and the same voices standing up and saying this is a mistake, and that you will put all of the people in Louisiana that are currently kratom consumers at a significant disadvantage, at a greater threat for the safety of the products that they're able to access, all because of a short-sighted look at what is so-called a Kratom ban. We need your help. We need you to stand up, to be there either by email or in person. And I'm telling you, in person is critically important if you can do it at 10:30 at the State Capitol building in Baton Rouge in room F. And let's let our voices be heard. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. Widely circulate this message and this particular video that we have at the webinar to everyone in your network so that they could hear this along the way. And this video will be up very quickly on protectkratom.org along the way. If we don't have email or phone numbers for them, send the email. You could probably call the state capitol and get their phone numbers. We'll do the best to try to provide those to you. But again, thanks to everyone for joining us. Bobby, thank you for your passion, for your advocacy, and support along the way.
And Mac, look, I got one other thing that I know people are a little concerned about and confused about. Can you just kind of enlighten a little bit about this protection bill that's on the floor right now? Because people kind of, from what I'm gathering, they feeling like we're going to have Kratom banned tomorrow. And then with that said, oh, it's not going to be banned tomorrow. We have time. But the critical element behind this protection bill is time, from what we gathered and from what happened, how it went to committee so fast. And I think, I think regardless if we get, this ban bill for the Senate sign to go in fact, we still have a little bit of protection that can, and I think people are, a little confused of, well, if we ban it, what's the point of protection? And can you just maybe just to the people of Louisiana, just let them kind of enlighten them on kind of the process of where things are at right now?
Thank you, Bobby. Glad to do so. There are two competing bills in the legislature. You have a ban bill, and then you have the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We obviously support the KCPA. We think regulation, responsible regulation, we're willing to amend that in order to get a responsible regulatory scheme in place because we know that the science doesn't justify a ban, that the public policy doesn't, and you don't base public policy on just the kinds of emotional tugs that people are just upset and they want to blame Kratom for something that the science doesn't support. So that's why we need your voice. So in the end of the day, the legislature can't pass competing bills. We want them to pass the KCPA. We want them to defeat the ban. And then the governor, if they did something like that, would have to choose. And the choice would be a veto one or the other because you can't have two obviously conflicting bills sitting there if they were to be passed, although it is highly unlikely that the legislature would allow that to happen. So we want the prevailing bill to be the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We know that there'll be amendments to it. We're working hard on finding that consensus. As I referenced earlier, we found in Colorado. I think we're there, and we'll be able to promote that. And then we'll see what the legislature wants if they want to add additional regulations that, if we can tolerate them, we're glad to do so. So, Bobby, thank you for pointing that out. And ask everyone once again, rally the troops. Get on your networks, get on the phone, get on emails, and tell everyone they need to raise their voices for this hearing on Thursday morning. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Bobby, for the great support that you've offered to us.
Always here. Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
On Tuesday. Thank you.